Lamborghini is resurrecting the Countach nameplate. It's one of the most iconic models in Lamborghini history. Let's have a look at what this is going to look like. And at the moment, we've got rather scant details about what the new Countach model is going to be, but we have some information. And recently, some photos, or at least some renders, have leaked. So this will give us an idea about what the Countach is going to look like and what it is likely going to involve. So let's have a look at those renders. Now, there's a couple of posts that I want to go through. Both of these are from an Instagram account named Varix, which apparently is in the leaking of supercar information game. And effectively, we've got some established information we already know, in addition to these potentially new images. So the established information we already know is they're resurrecting the Countach nameplate. We know it's going to be about 800 horsepower. We know that it is, or at least it's very likely to be, a hybrid engine. This is because they're using an OPI designation for the engine, which is what they're using with hybrids. Furthermore, they've already stated they weren't going to use another V12 naturally aspirated engine after the Aventador Ultimate. And in addition to this, we know that it's not going fully electric because Lamborghini is not in a position to make it fully electric. So it is very likely to be hybrid. 800 horsepower V12. Apparently, there are going to be 112 units made available. And what we also know is that the price appears not to be confirmed, which is not terribly surprising. We are likely to see this price being pretty astronomical. So who knows what it's going to be. But for all of these Lamborghini special editions and the like, for example, the Sian FKP, that was also expensive, so who knows really. But in any case, what we've got is some initial renders. Now, I'll go through some articles about this in a second, but I'll just go through the renders first. So we've effectively got a few different angles here, and it remains to be seen if these really correlate with what emerges in reality. But from the photos that Lamborghini itself has posted, these do look like a reasonable representation of reality, and I'll get to Lamborghini's own posts, such as they are. So firstly, we have a front-on picture. Now, what we can immediately see here is the initial bit here is the headlights are what really stand out, and also the shape of the hood. Now, the shape of the hood is very reminiscent of the original Countach. Similarly, the headlights here. The Countach had pop-up headlights. Thankfully, they are not resurrecting those. Still, it is very reminiscent if we sort of compare these side by side. In addition to this, we've also got the front grille. Now, the front grille is very narrow. I think it looks nice, but it's very narrow. It has some resonances of the Countach. The resonance of the original Countach is this very narrow bit right here. However, to my mind, there's also resonances of the Aventador / Huracan because there's some similarities there. And that's really coming in, to my mind, from this bit at the bottom, like the bottom vents, which have kind of that hexagonal type vibe the Lamborghini is going with. In addition to this, we can see from the front-on profile some additional features that are again reminiscent of the original. For example, we have these air intakes that are again very similar to the original, although redesigned to look a lot more modern. Clearly as well on the idea of modernness. It seems, at least from these renders, that the wheels are significantly larger than the original. Furthermore, it would appear that these headlights are going to be LEDs, which is unsurprising. So that's what we're seeing from the front. My personal opinion is that it is a very attractive car. I think it is actually better than I expected it might be. It certainly looks kind of Aventador-y, but if I were to say which of the more modern Lamborghinis this resembles, this actually reminds me quite a bit of some of the Gallardos. The reason I say that is the Gallardos have quite flat planes and quite flat angles, or at least they look quite flat. And you can see here with the hood, it's quite flat. Everything is a little bit more flat. It reminds me a bit more design language-wise of the Gallardos, to be honest, than a number of the V12s. But that's just what it looks like to my mind. You can let me know if you disagree with me there. So that's what we're seeing in terms of the front-on picture. In terms of the side-on picture, we get a bit more detail. The main detail here that is most reminiscent of the Countach are these slats right here, just near the air intake. And again, similar type of profile, and we're getting a very much an old type wedge shape. The thing that I distinguish, however, is it is slightly less angular than the original Countach. The original Countach is, it appears, a a bit more angular sidewise than the new one. Then if we go down to the rear, again, I think the rear is very well done. The rear right here, we have resonances in the headlights, the rear taillights, sorry. These taillights do look very similar to the original. The original Countach had taillights in a housing that was similar to this shape, albeit looking a little bit more dated. So I think it again is harking back to it. The other thing that I think is really reminiscent of the original Countach is the stance of the background, or the back, sorry, where it kind of rises up to these taillights, kind of comes to a point, which is what the original also looked like. So again, I think it's a very attractive car. I think it works incredibly well. And I actually quite like what they've done with the resurrection of the Countach. Now, whether it's really underwhelming or not will depend a little bit on what the internals are like what engine they actually use, whether it's that much different from an Aventador. If it comes across as being like a body kit for an Aventador, it's probably going to be a little bit more underwhelming than if it comes across as being something wholly different. And we can see this manifest in the comments. Now, the comments here seem to be somewhat randomly ordered, but anyway, it says here, Diablo front, Countach sides and rear, Aventador underneath. A tad disappointing. Then I'd get one, then reskinned, change name, $1 million sticker price, and some mad lads are still going to buy. So we're seeing some of the comments not being super positive. Another one which I kind of agree with is it needs the wing for nostalgia. I sort of agree with that. The wing was already a little bit useless in the original, but I can understand why they're saying it, but it was not the most practical wing in the world. But nevertheless, and then where are the pop-up headlights? Yeah, exactly. So that's effectively what we're seeing here with this initial render. We also have a slightly newer post as well, and the slightly newer post is again reminiscent of this, but it's in much higher detail. So in higher detail, we can see a reflection of what I already talked about. We can see in higher detail here, again, the very narrow front. We again see these air intakes and also the side right here. The side gives us a bit more of an idea about how this resembles the original Countach. And I think it works incredibly well. Now, if we look at the headlights, a little bit more slanted than the original headlights, but I think again, it works very well. I think it looks more modern than it originally did. Like if they just did the front on big squares, it would kind of look a little bit dated, to be honest. So overall, I think a very attractive car. I think it's very well done. I think at least in these renders, it looks a bit more small, a bit more manageable than a normal Aventador. I think it looks significantly better than a normal Aventador. The thing that I personally really like about it is Lamborghini has reined in some of the excess that exists with their other cars. So the Aventador, I don't particularly like because there are too many lines going everywhere. It gets a little bit too complicated. It looks like it's trying to show off a little bit too much. And it ultimately ends up being a situation of more is less is kind of what's happening there. And I don't particularly like the current Aventadors. I think this is a significantly more attractive car. Now that might in part be because I've owned two Gallardos, and I kind of prefer that slightly less complicated look. But I think this is very, very attractive. We can also look at some of the Lamborghini posts about this. So Lamborghini has posted some teaser pictures as well, and did this before the renders that I just mentioned. So in these teaser pictures, we can see some more detail. So for example, we can see some of the slats near the air intake, which I think are an important design feature. I actually think they look very attractive. So we're seeing some of that, seeing the fuel cap, which it's a fuel cap. Maybe some of you in the comments will tell me if that's particularly special, but I don't see anything particularly unusual. It looks attractive, but I mean, it's a fuel cap. In terms of the rear, it's telling us again V12, which is going to be reminiscent of the Aventador, albeit likely with a hybrid. And then we can see at the front, again, more information about this rather flat pointed front, which I think, again, is very attractive. I do kind of like this grille. It probably is not the best for aero, because let's face it, you've got like this big wall, which is going to kind of buffer the wind, but they would know more about this than me. I'm just thinking about what it would do to aero, but I'm sure that they've worked that one out. Then their caption is, unsurprisingly, rather grandiloquous, where they say, "Great creations are born from great traditions. Traditions are filled with inspirational stories, discoveries, breakthroughs, twists and turns, passing down a unique heritage. Traditions that have embraced change and innovation. Our latest creation is born from this tradition. Stay tuned to discover the new Lamborghini Countach." So again, rather magniloquous. I don't really have terribly much else to say about their caption other than it's waffle. But I do really like the car. And here, for example, is one of the older pictures of a Countach. And just to highlight the resonances between this new one and the old one, we can see the resonances really appearing with this front grille, albeit significantly modernized. The headlights significantly modernized. We're seeing the rear engine air intakes. Again, more modernized, but they look very nice. So again, really is a huge tie-in to the past, while significantly improving it, in my opinion. We're seeing this with the rear as well. So again, in our rear here, we're seeing the rear taillight housing. Again, looks very reminiscent between the two models. In the old one, it looks a little bit old, but I think it's aged well. But again, like I said, it looks old. And it has like this pointed apex here, where it's kind of coming to a point at the end, and we have kind of a quasi-hexagonal housing for the lights. Again, very similar to what was happening with our new Countach. We can also look at some of the reporting surrounding this. Now, to be totally clear, the reporting is not going to really add terribly much to what I've already said, but this is from Motor One, and it says, "The new supercar begins to take shape. Earlier this week, Lamborghini announced that the Countach name is returning, teasing the sleek supercar by it hiding under a sheet. Today, the Italian automaker has dropped 3 new teaser images on Instagram. They give us our first glance of what we should expect from the car's design. The 3 images reveal slivers of the supercar, showing that it will sport some retro styling cues. The new teasers showed off quite a bit without revealing too much of the car. One image shows off the sharp-nosed front end, with a lowercase Countach badge on the slim grille. The photo reveals a massive lower opening and a deep front splitter. The second teaser image allows us to peer into the engine bay at a gold-accented V12 engine. It's unclear if Lamborghini will pair the engine with electric assist, though the possibility is there. The V12 as we know it will get replaced with one that is a hybrid. And to be clear, they've already used some hybrid-type models in the Sian, for example, so I do suspect that this would be a hybrid. So that's a bit of an update about Lamborghini's new Countach model. I am personally excited for it. I think it's a very attractive car. I like the design language they've brought to the Countach. What remains to be seen is exactly what powers it. And it remains to be seen how exciting and attractive it is, and whether it's a reskinned Aventador. I suspect that it is not just going to be a reskinned Aventador, from what we know so far. But of course, that remains to be determined. And overall, I think Lamborghini is doing a great job with this car. Now, I know that some people have mentioned it's a little disappointing, being a reskinned Aventador, blah, blah, blah. But I do actually think that it is an important car. I think it's an important step forward, moving into hybridization. And hybridization is not necessarily a problem with these cars. It could, in fact, be the best of both worlds, where you've got some of the significant acceleration benefits from electric motors with some of the ICE benefits, such as the fuel associated with ICEs, the extent that one particularly wants to get that. So I can definitely see it as being an important and very interesting model. And let's face it, if the next V12 is going to be a hybrid, and this is a slight hybrid as well, it's going to be a little bit different from the existing Aventador and a movement toward the next generation of V12s. So I'm definitely excited to see what exactly is revealed when Lamborghini ultimately reveals this car. In any case, if you have any thoughts about the Countach, let me know that in the comments below. Otherwise, it would be great if you like the video and subscribe to the channel. And I'm selling some of my watches online, so check out luxuryprofessor.com, where I'm selling some of these watches. You might find something that interests you. In any case, thanks a lot for tuning in, and I hope to see you for future videos as well. Bye!